This podcast is a production of WCWP, LIU Public Radio. Check out our lineup of original programs, listen live, or support by visiting WCWP.org.
Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead. We provide programs and services designed to assist and support the older town residents who wish to remain in their homes as they age. If we don't currently provide a service, we will try and connect you to that service. Call 311 or 869-6311 to get more information or receive services.
Welcome to Project Independence and You.
Good morning. It's Project Independence and You Senior Talk Radio here today, and we are back to being live on the air. It feels really good to be back to being live on the air. In addition to this will be on North Hempstead Television via Zoom. Our co-host today is Otto Louse. Otto is a long time Project Independence member, supporter of Project Independence, volunteer, committee member. It's just great to have Otto. Otto is also a resident of the town of North Hempstead since 1971, living in Manhasset for 26 years. Give or take, right? And then a move to New Hyde Park ever since. So we're just always happy to have Otto as the co-host here today. So welcome, Otto.
Rebecca, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you. I feel badly that John Ryan could not be here, but it's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Otto. Today's guest is North Hempstead's very own New York State Senator Anna Kaplan. Anna is not just a New York State Senator from North Hempstead, but she was also a council person for District 4 in North Hempstead from about 2011 to 2018. Today's show is going to be extremely informative and very, very interesting. Senator Kaplan, we are so thrilled to have you here today. We know you came in very late last night from Albany, and we're really grateful to have you here. So how are you doing this morning?
Good morning. First of all, I want to thank you for having me. Project Independence is not something new to me. I've been on your radio show many times, and it's always a pleasure to come back and reconnect with all of our wonderful seniors.
Yes, we know you have, Project Independence goes back 15 years, and you were a big supporter with Project Independence and all the programming that we did. And I know Otto is anxious to find out a lot of information from you, including your background. Otto and I were talking a lot about it before the show.
Yeah, Anna, I know you've shared this with many people, and I read about your background, but I'm kind of personally interested, and I'm sure some of our listeners would also be more interested in your story. It could actually, I believe your story could be a movie almost. It's got some intrigue to it. And to me, one of the big things in life is nobody chooses how they are born, what they look like, where they were born. You know, your entry level in life is something you just have nothing to say about. You know, it happens, and that's the story. So your story of your entry level and where you started, I find quite interesting. Maybe you could just give us kind of a brief overview and kind of put it in a context of how old you were when these things were going on. I'd be quite interested in hearing that.
Thank you, Otto. I have to say, I was very young, and I am part of a family with 4 older brothers, and a very conservative, traditional home. So I think the decision to send me to United States was a very difficult one for my parents. I was about 12, 11 when the whole protesting started in Iran. And at 13, I saw Shah leaving Iran, Ayatollah Khomeini coming in, and it was a few months after that, and I was 13 years old. When I left with 39 other kids, we went to Italy and applied for a visa to United States. We were there for about 5 days. And then from there, we came to New York. I came as a result of big push through the big Rebbe, Schneerson in Lubavitcher Rebbe in Crown Heights, who came and said, and they came through different synagogues in Iran to tell the Jewish residents that it wasn't safe for them to stay in Iran anymore and that they should leave. And if they can't leave themselves, they should at least let them take their children and bring them to US until such time they are able to join them. So I did come with 39 other kids. There are people sometimes who ask me, was this very difficult for you? Were you scared? You were only 13 years old. I have to say, I think looking back, I was just so much more excited about coming here than being frightened. For me, a country that stands for all the right things and for giving opportunities to all immigrants from all over the globe to come and to work hard and to have a good future and to benefit from the freedoms that are offered to the residents of this country meant so much more to me. I am privileged, really, to have lived the life that I've lived.
Did you speak English when that happened? Were you speaking English at that age, or?
We had English in school,
Right.
but I have to really give the credit to Happy Days and General Hospital for my English. Those were some of the things that I would watch, which helped me. But obviously, at the same time, I was going to high school and was learning English.
I'm in first generation. My parents came from Germany in like 1928, and they were very young, 17 years old, and they didn't know each other. But I can very much relate to any immigrant that tries to come in to this country and do the best they can to better their lives. Really, it's it's a tough thing. Now, were your four brothers? Did any of them come along, or were you the?
So I already had two brothers who were in colleges in Chicago, but they were in the dorms. It was not really a place for me to go to. I stayed with a Jewish family throughout the high school period until the time my parents, which was 2 years after I arrived, when they were able to come and for us to reunite. And I have to say, my parents left Iran about 6 months later than me. But it really hit the time that they took hostages, and United States government stopped issuing visas to any Iranian. And they took refuge in Israel for about a year and a half because they couldn't go back to Iran. And Israel was the only safe haven for them. They waited it out. Once the hostages were released, they started issuing visas, and my parents were in the queue. They got their visas and they joined us. And that's when my family reunited.
Good movie.
Good story. And
you, Otto. Otto, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Who's going to play me in the movie?
Say that again.
Who's going to play her?
Play me in the movie?
Oh, we'll figure that out. You.
I like it. I would love to have some suggestions.
You play the part.
Yeah, no.
That's a great question.
What I do.
That's another show.
Who's going to play you as a younger girl?
We'll have to have auditions at some point. I don't know. There's so many, but I mean, your story is just so amazing, your journey. And, you know, to go from that as such a young child to New York State Senator Anna Kaplan. How did you get, how did that happen? What was your journey like? It's just so amazing to, you know, imagine what you went through and being separated from your family and your parents and crossing oceans and just kind of, you know, and it's like as soon as you arrive, you assimilate to these soap operas that, you know, we all watch. You know, it's just so, you know, it's so interesting, and it's just it's almost unimaginable. Here we are today talking to you after you traveling from Albany after passing a bill through the Senate last night. It's just, how does one get from there to where you are now?
So Rebecca, I have to tell you, there isn't a day that I don't recognize how blessed I am and how humbling it is for me to represent 315,000 residents in state of New York and to participate in a democracy where we pass legislation that affects over 19 million people. I am truly blessed and privileged, and for me, it weighs a lot on me as to wanting to make sure I do the right thing, first by my residents, but also by the entirety of the state of New York. I get up sometimes, I feel like I'm watching a movie and I'm gonna wake up and it's not gonna be true. But I'm blessed. That's all I can say.
Now you
I
mentioned
did not set up to do this. It was just a path that was put in front of me.
you mentioned something about just coming back from Albany and had a very successful trip, if you will, or a session. Maybe you could kind of elaborate a little bit and tell us what the success was.
I would love to, Otto. When I was running for New York State Senate 2 years ago, one of my big promises was sensible gun laws. I went to a lot of rallies. I heard from a lot of young students, high school students, college students, parents. They're concerned about the gun violence, the epidemic violence that we see throughout this country. And I swore that that would be one of my big, big priorities, top 5, if not top 1. And we passed a package of sensible gun laws last year, which was amazing. But this year, I have been advocating for gun laws which deal with ghost guns, which are also called 80% finished guns or receivers. You might find it surprising. You can sit behind a computer, you can Google 80% receivers or ghost guns. Page after page after page after page comes up where an individual could even be an individual of 12, 13, 14 years old. Sit down, order one of these kits online, and have it delivered to their home in 3 days.
We have been speaking with New York State Senator Anna Kaplan, one of North Hempstead's prides, and where we have very filled with pride to have Senator Kaplan from North Hempstead, and also a councilwoman here for 7 years. We were talking before the break, Senator Kaplan, about a New York State in the Senate last night that of the passing of a banning of receivers. So you were kind of in detail before we went to the break. So I'm hoping that we could just pick up where we left off.
As I said, you can go ahead online and order these receivers, unfinished receivers, online, and have them delivered to your home in 3 days, and with a DVD walking you through every single step of assembling a firearm. Based on our federal government's law that were passed in 1968, every gun, every manufacturer of a firearm or an importer of a firearm has to make sure that each gun has a serial number and it gets registered. These 80% finished receivers don't have a serial number, which makes it very difficult for our law enforcement when they recover them in crime scenes to trace. And almost everyone is on the same page that this is important regulation, that every gun should have a serial number and be registered. And if you look at a finished receiver and unfinished receivers, they are identical, with the exception of maybe 4 holes that you can drill to assemble the gun. So, and as we've seen, there's been a big rise during this pandemic for purchase of firearms throughout the country. In between March to May, in New York alone, we have seen a uptick of 32% of purchasing of firearms. Throughout the country, that number is 80%. We need to make sure that we do everything in our power, that our communities are safe. This was a companion bill that I passed with my colleague, Senator Hoylman. My bill was basically banning possession of these kits and these pieces that you could put together. One piece that's meant to be very easily turned into a finished receiver. His bill is to make sure that every gun that is already out there as a ghost gun, which doesn't have a serial number, to get a serial number and to be registered. Our Attorney General, Tish, has done a lot. Just 2 weeks ago, she passed and sent a cease and desist to 17 manufacturers that they cannot sell those guns to New Yorkers because it violated the SAFE Act. But there are over 85 of these manufacturers throughout the country. So it's really important. I'm really blessed to have been able to bring this up to the Senate floor, for my leader, Andrea Stewart Cousins, allowing me to bring it to the floor for a vote. We passed it with 40 to 20. Unfortunately, my Republican colleagues decided not to pass and vote for it. But we had the majority and we were able to pass it. And I'm looking forward to working and making sure this gets passed through the Assembly, and then it goes to the governor for his signature and making it into a law.
And a question on that. People have guns without serial numbers. What would the process be? Should they then go somewhere, or what's the process? How do you get a serial number, and how do you put a serial number on a gun? I'm not a gun owner, but just
I'm not either, but there is a procedure. You can go ahead. Every county has their officers. You can apply for an application and fill the application and become a licensee and get serial numbers to put on your gun. Or there are people who actually do that for you. To become a licensee, the fee is $25 for New York City, Nassau County, and Suffolk County, and $10 for the entire rest of the state. And all law-abiding gun owners understand the importance of having a serial number. This talks about people who want to evade going through a background check. And through a study that one of the every town has done, their numbers indicate out of the 114 federal cases of finding these guns, the people who try to obtain them are people who will not go through background check. And if they did, they would not qualify to obtain a gun.
What's the penalty if you're caught with a gun that doesn't have a serial number?
Well, we don't have, first, this law has to go into effect.
Right.
Which means Assembly has to pass it and the governor has to sign it into law. After that, we're giving them 180 days to come in compliance. And anyone else who is a gun enthusiast and hobbyist has another 6 months. So basically giving them 1 year to come into compliance with this.
Right.
But that those guns wouldn't be able to be sold here to residents of state of New York.
And if you don't comply after the 1 year and you get caught with such a gun or you commit a crime with such a gun, what would that do to?
There are several steps, felony charges. It could be felony C, D, E, or F. It all depends to really the details of how this was found in the crime scene and what level it falls into. Every case would be different.
Okay.
So yes, I'm very excited. I am a little tired, but I am just so happy to have seen that law be passed on Senate floor. And I passed the law in the memory of Scott J. Beagle, who was a teacher, really a hero, who gave his life to save the lives of his own students. As I'm sure you know, he was a teacher. He's a Long Island native, and he was teaching at Marjorie Stone Douglas High School in Florida.
Well, thank you for all your hard work getting this pushed through. And it's so important that these things happen, and you've been quite a voice for that, and we're so grateful for that.
Thank you.
It's just amazing, and you know, I know we're also interested in a lot of the committees that you're part of, which there are many. I know Otto's really interested in hearing about the Internet and Technology Committee. And Otto, why don't you elaborate a little bit more on your interest?
Yeah, first, I'm a big proponent of seniors learning as much as they can learn about the internet and technology, even if it's just the basics of being able to access the internet and do email. And then from there, you can do a lot of other things. But I'm kind of on a bandwagon lately. I've had some family experiences where family members wound up going into the hospital, 97 years old, broke their hip. There they are, they get dropped off at the emergency room door. Nobody can go in with them, and they're in there on their own. And then they're in there for several days and super difficult to communicate and find out what's going on with that person. Then they end up finally getting a phone call, oh, you're going to wind up in rehab, which was kind of silly because this person couldn't even stand. But so they going to send him to rehab, and then he goes to rehab, and then they find out, well, no, they can't really do rehab because he can't get out of the chair. So now they decide he's going to go to a nursing home. All of this is going on with like maybe 3 minutes of communication over a week. And long story short, this man who was 97 years old ended up dying with nobody with him, and he had 5 children, and they couldn't be with him. So where I'm going with this whole thing is the new normal has to change, in my opinion, and I believe part of that would be nursing homes, hospitals, whatever. And I'm not the technical wizard that can do this, but I'm suggesting that the TVs in hospitals or nursing homes should be smart TVs, and the ability to communicate with the doctor or the patient, whoever's there, that should become the normal and the expected method, as opposed to somebody, taking a phone and saying, well, maybe I can do you a favor and let you do FaceTime for 30 seconds with your father or your mother or whoever. So anyhow, that's my story. And, I've had a number of situations that I've heard about lately where it's very sad, it's not humane, and I believe that internet and technology can help in that arena. So that's why I'm curious, what does the Internet and Technology Committee do?
So we look at internet technology is chaired by Senator Sabino, who I respect very much. She has a long history in New York State Senate and really is very informative about different legislations that come. Those legislations really come through advocates, people like yourself, where they have an idea and they come to us and say, this would be a good legislation for you to pass. And of course, we do our homework to see if it's right and pass it and bring it to the Senate floor for a vote and follow through. But I couldn't agree with you more with exactly with what you said. I think this pandemic has been hard on everyone. Every one of us here would rather be in that studio and doing this. But at least we have the opportunity to get together through Zoom and to conduct this. But I think you're right, this has been even harder for our seniors. Harder because they're feeling very lonely, they are feeling very out of touch, they can't see their loved ones can't come to visit them. Obviously, what the regulations that was put in place was really for their own safety, because we don't want to put them in a situation that their health is being compromised. But you're absolutely right. We have all of this technology. Unfortunately, some of this technology sometimes gets used in a bad way. Why don't we take it and turn it around, like you say, and use it in a way that is actually helpful, especially to our seniors who are feeling very, very much neglected maybe. And that's not as a way of really neglecting them, but just the situation is what it is. And we're trying to do our best to minimize the adversity that one-on-one visits would have on their health. So yes, I agree with you. I will certainly look and see if there's anything we can do in New York State legislature to make it easier.
We've been speaking this whole hour. We're going to be speaking with and have been speaking to Senator Anna Kaplan, New York State Senator Anna Kaplan. And before we went to this break, we were talking about the committee, the Internet and Technology Committee that Senator Kaplan sits on. And Otto also kind of led up to it was what's been happening over the coronavirus pandemic and what technology could really mean for people who are hospitalized, isolated, when you have to go to the hospital and can't bring any loved ones and the communication is minimal. And there's a lot of other needs for communication, certainly with the coronavirus, and particularly we're on Zoom right now and a live radio show. So that has a lot to do with it. So Senator, one of the things that, Project Independence has learned, just like we learned things with Sandy, what we've changed, what the lessons that we've learned, particularly staying in communication with people and trying to figure out how to stay in communication with people when you have barriers like maybe no power, or in this case, you're quarantined in your house. So a lot of the things that we're learning now through this quarantine, we're going to carry on with virtual programming, staying connected on the phone. There's not all our seniors in the town are technology savvy. So we have a lot of our programming that's on North Hempstead Television, and this too will be airing on North Hempstead Television. So it's been a real relief, and we're getting some wonderful, wonderful responses. So, the internet and technology committee is so important for seniors too. So it's great to have you on that committee. It's so important because you understand, particularly coming from North Hempstead with Project Independence, how important it is. And so I think this is a great way to lead into some learning about some of the updates that are happening now as we're coming, to through different phases of the pandemic. And maybe we can talk something about the updates federally with the state and locally. I guess, starting locally would be, great for, especially, your district. What's kind of happening now? What are the things that are coming down the pike in terms of, as we go further and further coming out of the pandemic?
So thank you. I think that's a great question. First, I want to really give credit to the 19 million people in the state of New York. When we went to pause, it was right after I left Albany, after we had passed our budget on March 31st. And this wasn't a result of Governor Cuomo getting on TV and saying, we're going to pause. It wasn't a result of me saying everybody should quarantine and stay at home. This was really the work of the 19 million people, understanding how important this is, listening to the data, listening to the experts, and understanding this is a good thing for all of us to do, and each and every one of us should take part in it and do our part and quarantine. And that was what actually helped us to bend the curve and flatten the line. It is really important that we continue to do that, because as you can see, our country right now, down in South, a lot of different states are having a very difficult time getting grip over this. So I'm proud to stand with Governor Cuomo for his guidance and for walking us through this and getting us to the point where we are now, that we have flattened it. But we still need to do a lot more work. And I understand there's a lot of information out there. You don't know what's accurate, what's not accurate. The situation is so fluid that it changes by the hour, if not by the minute. And I saw how important it was to give the right information to my constituents and my residents. My staff and I made a conscious decision from beginning to have daily newsletter go out to everyone that we had email address, and giving them up-to-date information dealing with local government, state government, and federal. All up-to-date, current, correct information so that they can decide what they need to do next. There is less news now, so now we're doing it twice a week, but we are fully committed to, when there is a lot of news, doing it even again on a regular basis, whenever it needs to be. I invite anyone, any of your viewers or listeners, to go sign up. It's a newsletter that could come to your email. It's coronavirus.senatorkaplan.com, and it will give you all the information. And if you have any questions that is not addressed in there, you can certainly shoot us an email or call my office. We're very responsive. We try to get back and let people know how we can help them. And right now, one of the big things we tried, in terms of, we understand it's summer and people want to go out. We gave guidelines as to opening up the pools. Gyms are not open because we don't want to see a spike. If we're just conscious, I know New Yorkers are resilient. We will overcome this and we will move forward stronger. We just have to be very smart. And the fact is, even if we decided as the elected to go ahead and open everything up, that is not the answer, because people have to feel safe in order to go out. if they feel that there is still a chance of them getting COVID, they are not going to be going out on a regular basis. So we have to adjust to the new time that we're living in and adapt and do our best. Right now, I think one big thing that's very priority for all of us, for me, is the schools and the openings of schools and what we're doing. Last week, state gave guidelines, and we're also asking superintendents for their help, because one community could be very okay and don't have any spikes and don't have any COVID patients. One community could have a lot. So we're also giving them some authority to make decisions, but we're going to hold hearings as to give a little bit more of a guidelines to the schools as to what they need to do in order for the students, whether that's going to be just solely remote, whether a combination of remote and in school, or going to school full time. Obviously, our priority is the safety of our children. Those kids come in contact with teachers, the administrative crew in the school, and then they go back home. So safety is our first and foremost important thing to follow through. But of course, we understand the importance of also having schools open or have some sort of a way for our children to make sure that they're being educated. So that's what I'm working on right now.
It's a tough time for children as well. We talk about seniors, but children to be locked up in a house basically when they've got energy to burn
Yes.
is not a particularly good thing. You know,
And in the summertime.
one of the topics that I read that you've been actively encouraging is this contact tracing. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit. Who would be contacted? Like, is there a database that lists who the people are that have had?
You know what, Otto? That's a great point.
Well, yeah, I hear about testing and tracing and so on. Maybe we could elaborate a little bit on this tracing thing. You indicate somewhere in my notes that I read that there's a phone call people might receive from a tracing group. And then the second part of that question is like, who might get contacted? Are these people who have already had COVID, or how does that work?
So tracing is really perfect time for us to do. When you are at the height, it's very hard to do tracing because you would be calling so many people. But now that we've bent the curve and we've flattened it, if someone does go to hospital or someone is, first of all, New Yorkers are able now to go and get a test done. That is covered. It's available to every New Yorker. Please go ahead and do so if you haven't. If it's positive, you will be contacted so that they can trace in the last 14 days who you've come close contact with. And they will call that person and find out how they are doing. This is a vehicle, a way to make sure if there are people who are positively tested, we make sure that we reach out to all the people that have been in contact with them in the last 14 days, who could also be asymptomatic carriers, make sure that they are negative, and if not, ask them to quarantine so that this does not spread. And we can keep the curve down and hopefully move forward until such time that there is a vaccine. And we're all hoping, I know this is something that every lab, I've spoken with 3 different labs here that are working on it, but I know there's labs all over the world that are working on this to come up with a vaccine.
Hopefully they share when the time comes.
Yes, I think they will.
I think so, hopefully.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So anyhow, COVID has created a lot of problems for a lot of people. And we talked about children before, and I know you're quite advocate of child abuse, and the fact that COVID right now, it's hidden, I'm sure, but that there are problems going on. Children are not going to school. They, people, the teachers and whoever can't detect that a child has been abused. And it's again, I say we kind of always underestimate impact of things on children, that they're resilient and, blah, blah, and they'll get over it. I don't believe that to be true at all. I think children are a lot smarter than we give them credit for, and that things go on. They'll be in their mind for a long, long time to come in their life, when they're older even. So a point, I guess, is what is your involvement in that, and how could people, if they're aware of somebody having a problem, what's the way to go about maybe trying to help those people without yourself getting into hot water? How do you handle that?
Thank you, Otto. That's a great question. I have to tell you, when it was coming down to shutting down the schools, it was such a difficult decision for all of us to make and for the governor to make, because schools right now in our society don't just act as a place where children go to get an education. They go there, some of the kids go and get their food source from school. They get their social workers source from school. They have many eyes on them. So if they see a child is being abused, they can recognize it and do something about it. So that decision really is a very important decision for all of us. We understand the importance of the role that the schools play in our children's lives today. I actually, about a couple of weeks ago, did a Zoom event with Safe Center, where we try to highlight and make sure that people keep an eye. If you see something and it just doesn't look or feel right to you, call up. It's better safe than sorry. Call up and report this. I have this section of my Zoom event with Safe Center on my website. People can go ahead and check it out. They can ask for help. They can call up Safe Center. They can call up police. And I don't believe they even have to give their names. But it's worth checking and making sure that things are okay. And if they're not, they would know what to do next. When I got elected to the council seat, also to the Senate, I've always said, kids, children, and seniors are my priority, because I don't think they have as a strong voice for themselves as you and I might have. And I take it very seriously to make sure that I do everything in my power to represent them well. And I'm so proud to say, last year in our budget, when we passed our budget, New York State got a 3.6% increase to the foundation aid, which is extra money that comes from New York State to our school districts. In my district, that percentage was 8.6%. I wanted to make sure that I bring more money back for our public schools, because I know the better education we give to our children, the better their future will be. Agreed. And I will continue to do that.
Agreed 100%. Education is an important track for every group in the country to try to move forward. Without the education, it's tough.
That's right. That's right. And if I know we're going to run out of time, but I want to say it is very difficult time for all of us. I understand your pain. I have had to make a lot of condolence calls, and it breaks my heart to make those calls. but I also have seen the good in people during this pandemic. When people come together and communities help each other and donate to the food banks so that they can help a family that's struggling right now to put food on the table. We've seen the really good and we've seen the really bad. I know we're resilient. I know we will overcome this stronger. I'm looking forward to doing more for our small businesses as a chair of Small Business and Economic Development and Commerce in New York State. I will continue to do that. And I have to tell you, I'm an optimist. If anyone can do it, it's us. The more united we are, the more we stand together, the better we can solve these problems.
Well, business, I know you've run a webinar for businesses, and I empathize with all the small businesses. It's a super, super difficult time. Some will go down, some won't. But there were a lot of good suggestions I read about adapting, and the market is changing. So hopefully you can get through it financially, where there are some support systems out there for, but you have to, just like life, you have to adapt and change to the way the market is right now. A lot of markets will never be the same. It's not going to happen. And some of them will be major. There'll be major impacts.
Yes.
No question. Office space, probably less. Retail malls, less. A lot of stuff, less. But something else is going to take its place. So
that's right.
You have to keep your eyes and ears open. A big number, and people sometimes have a problem taking this stuff seriously. And I read in some of your notes, 25,000 people have died in New York State, that rough number, as a result of COVID. That's a lot of people. And if you can't take that seriously, I don't know what you have to do to make it work.
That's right.
But anyhow, that's a lot of editorializing on my part. So let's go back to Rebecca.
So, it's really great. What you said before, Anna, about, being a voice for the younger generation and the older generation is so important because, our older population, of course, is growing. At this time, AARP did a study, I would say a couple of years ago, that 10,000 people a day are turning 65. So that's kind of like 10,000 people a day are turning 65. Those that were born in 1963, 1964, the end of the baby boom generation, when they hit 65, we are going to have the oldest population that we've ever had in this country. And so that being, if anybody should have a voice, it's really the seniors. I mean, they're going to be the majority of the population. And the other point is that we're going to have the oldest people. We have people living well into their 80s and 90s, active, and even into their hundreds. We have seniors that are having to work, some choose to work into their 70s and 80s. So the voice is not the same voice that it was 20 or 30 years ago. We have a huge population growth for the seniors. So it's so good to know that you're in place in the New York State Senate at this time with that understanding. And and also, of course, for the children. And I know that's always been, a huge priority for you. So it's been, great having this conversation with you. And it's so good to have you in North Hempstead and a friend of, the radio station, and always coming back to the town for, these interesting information meetings and chats. And, Otto does sit on our technology committee, so maybe one day you would consider, if you're in town, maybe joining us at that committee. We'd love to hear some of the information you've provided today, but we are coming to the end of our chat with New York State Senator Anna Kaplan, and we do want to thank you so much and appreciate the fact that you had very little sleep driving in from Albany last night after passing a very, very important banning bill of receivers. And it's just great to know that you're there.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you to all the listeners and Zoom audience. I want to give a shout out to John Ryan. I miss him. Hopefully next time we will have him with us. And I'm looking forward to, I would love to come to your internet technology time and definitely tell you about some of the legislations we've passed. And with that, I'm going to say, God bless you. Please stay safe, and looking forward to doing these in person.
All right. Thanks again.
Like what you hear? Here's how you can let us know. Give us a call at 516-299-2626 or email us at info@wcwp.org. Like us at facebook.com/mywcwp and leave a comment or tweet us at mywcwp. We welcome all kinds of feedback. To directly support the podcast you just enjoyed, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to give back, visit wcwp.org and click the support tab. Thanks for listening from your friends at WCWP.